Julia Best. I'm pursuing my master's in marriage and family therapy with a focus in art therapy. I started this 3-year program in August of this year, and I'm excited to share with you what I'm learning. So art therapy is a discipline pioneered by women during a time when the sciences, especially psychology, were intensely male-dominated. So this was the time of Freud and psychoanalysis. And Margaret Naumburg and Edith Kramer both discovered the utility of art alongside psychotherapy, specifically psychoanalysis, in the early 20th century, and they wrote and taught prolifically throughout their lives. Both women took that psychoanalytic lens, which was so popular at the time, and this added credence to this budding science of art therapy, and we really have them to thank for that. So in art therapy, making art within this therapeutic relationship offers an opportunity for clients to externalize their inner world. And visual expression has this potential to break endless cycles of rationalization and rumination, leading to new ways of seeing and knowing ourselves. So Edith Kramer called this, really underscored process and product, and acknowledged that this should lead to catharsis and should be an act of sublimation through the art itself. So through art, we can quite literally see our stories, our narratives, the events which we link together in a sequence across time and according to a plot. Humans are interpretive. We seek to find meaning in our daily life and in our life as a whole. So the stories we tell ourselves are how we string together our life events with a through line that carries meaning. And reductive explanations are an inherent part of that. They help us cope with a confusing world. So becoming aware of those narratives is incredibly beneficial. And that's because our actions are determined by our currently dominant stories about who we are and what we're capable of. Many stories are going on simultaneously, both dominant and alternative, individual and collective. And life truly proceeds via this mediation between the dominant and alternative stories. And these stories are an access point for both narrative and art therapy. So narrative therapy, as part of art therapy, seeks to be a respectful, non-blaming approach to counseling and community work, which centers people as the experts in their own lives. It views problems as separate from people and highlights skills that humans have inherently, competencies, beliefs, values, commitments, and abilities that help them solve the problems in their lives. Something very important in this work is the stance of curiosity and the willingness to ask questions of your clients that you genuinely don't know the answer to. My background working with San Francisco suicide prevention as a crisis counselor informs where I want to go with my graduate work. I'm motivated to find the clinical utility and applicability of art and narrative therapies as strength-based approaches, short-term, to crisis counseling. And I'm particularly interested in focusing my research on women and girls, especially in shelter and school settings. I'm interested in currently the idea of genograms or family trees, in particular, which may create a unique opportunity to explore and retell family stories, family narratives, and enable a reauthoring of those narratives. So stopping a cycle of intergenerational trauma and abuse. I really appreciate you taking the time to view our many videos and your dedication to women in higher education. And I hope to share more as I continue with this program. Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Lynn and I'm a PhD candidate at UCLA Fielding School of Public Health. My dissertation topic is on the earned income tax credit, and I became interested in this topic because I am the daughter of refugees. The seven of us came to the United States in 1995, and we utilized every single social benefit that you could think of. And that experience navigating my family through welfare offices, medical care, dealing with social workers really informed my motivations and aspirations to do more advocacy in the policy space. But while doing that advocacy, I realized that data equity is required for social equity, and that if I wanted to really help my community, then I really need to become someone who could understand research and create the data that my community needed. And so that led me, sorry, let me just try to change the screen. That led me to study social benefits like the earned income tax credit. Just for context, the earned income tax credit is the largest poverty alleviation program in the country currently. This is due to two reasons. One is that in 1996, you had welfare reform, which led to cuts and changes to many other programs, work eligibility requirements, the 5-year bar, which limited access for legally present residents, that were immigrants. And then secondly is that the earned income tax credit is a relatively popular program with bipartisan support and has been expanded significantly in the last few decades. There's a large literature on how it works, and it helps with outcomes that are short-term to long-term outcomes. It helps with the outcomes of children as well as parents and families. So overall, it's a great program, but for some reason, 1 in 5 of the folks who are eligible do not take it up. And my main question is just to ask why. And furthermore, not just why, but what are the reasons that enable people who are relatively similar to folks who don't take it up? What makes some people able to do it and not others? And are there lessons we can learn from that in order to help other folks better able to take it up? Could it inform implementation strategies? Could it inform policy? That's what I'm hoping to better understand. So I acknowledge that there's already a vast literature that's mostly in welfare economics. So the existing discussion is on administrative barriers. So these are things like how difficult is it to file taxes, for mixed status families and their concerns, like are they underutilizing it? Are there individual level factors, including non-modifiable things like immigration status, that prevent some people from accessing it? And my hypothesis is that while those things are valid, there might be certain dimensions or nuance that we're missing because we're not utilizing more theory from the broader social science field to understand and build their conceptual models and frameworks. So my suggestion is to consider using Bourdieu's theory of capital, which basically talks about how it's not just money that enables people to access resources, but there's cultural capital, which are things like understanding the knowledge of how to navigate systems, social capital, which includes like knowing the right people to get the right information to navigate the system, and then modifying his theory of capital with a more asset-based framework, because Purdue is criticized for being a deficit frame, incorporating intersectionality theory so that we're thinking about how specific intersections of identities are grappling with not just like how they experience the world is different, but what types of systems of oppression are hindering their ability to access resources, as well as the World Health Organization's social and structural determinants of health framework, which is a multi-level framework that looks at a variety of different factors which affect a person's ability to be healthy. Sorry, let me just advance the slide. And my goals are basically to argue that we're missing some variables, and that if we continue to ignore these these cultural capital measures, then there's going to be more inequities in health outcomes, because we're not really fully understanding why some people are taking it up and why others aren't. And so at a research level, I think I'm hoping to improve the integration of theory and quant, because most of the EITC literature is in welfare economics, and then all this theory is in more qualitative theoretical discussions. And then secondly is to actually improve policy and implementation. And in the future, the goal is, of course, to help with our modeling of causal inference on outcome measures. Because there might, if we think that there's going to be differences in uptake, then we might also think that the models for outcomes also could use some help. And that's my dissertation. Thank you, everyone.
Hi, good evening, everyone. I wanted to share with you my presentation for the AAUW International Fellowship. And since I'm a screenwriter, I wanted to have a new take, and I wanted to show my perspective as to why I am a screenwriter and what are the projects I've been working on so far. The entire presentation is centered around the topic as to why stories matter, and why they matter in today's political and cultural climate all the more than before. A little bit about me. My name is Shuchi Dwivedi. I am a screenwriter who is studying screenwriting at the American Film Institute. I'm in my second year of my graduation. I am originally from India, and I came here because I felt that for me, cinema has always been a means of collective memory. And I have, I saw firsthand while I was in India that there, with the rise of autocratic and majoritarian governments, there was an erasure of minorities and subaltern entities. And most people who exist in media, women are deeply marginalized, and there are only 12% women at the helm of affairs in the film and television industry in India. And this is on the basis of this report that a Film Companion did in 2022. And I feel that since cinema is a form of collective memory, I feel like if there is an erasure of minorities and women, we're passing down a horrifying message to the next generation that their viewpoint, their life, their stories don't matter. And my aim and my goal while pursuing my master's, my MFA in screenwriting, is to tackle these issues head on by putting women and people of subaltern entities at the forefront of my stories. And I have done this in my first year through the 3 short films that I worked on as a writer. They're centered mostly on topics that there are stories of women of color, or people, as I mentioned, in social margins. The first film that I worked on was The Last Dance, which was about a couple who are stuck in a Japanese internment camp. And I think the larger thematic question that we asked ourselves was, do you sometimes, as a regular, normal human being, do you have the option of being apolitical, especially the time of war? The second film that I worked on was called The Holding Pattern. It was about a mother-daughter relationship, and the thematic question was, when there is so much generational differences that are there between the two of you, how do you find common ground between 2 women of color? And the answer was by acknowledging that there is a lot of anger and that there is a lot of negativity that exists between these relationships, which is mostly external and needs to be addressed internally. The other film that I worked on was called Pro Bono, which was about this man who has been sentenced to go to prison. But the reason why we're all invested in his story is that this man, the other one in power, the lawyer, feels that he is responsible because the other person is an accused. So there are already preconceived prejudices against him. And the film explores what does it mean to have preconceived notions about people who are touted as accused persons. So with all of these themes, I was trying to put people who have not been seen before in the forefront, people of color, women, and people in the peripheries of social settings, to be there in the forefront. In this year, I am working on the first project that I'm working on. It's called Behind the Curtain. Behind the Curtain is my thesis film, and it's a short film which follows Tati Reyes, who is a strong-willed medical assistant who's working in an abortion clinic that is understaffed and underfunded. And with the arrival of the new hire, Tati becomes insecure of her own background and education. And this is why we're trying to tackle this, trying to make this like an office setup and make abortion a part of the conversation. In the story, while political tensions mount outside and the clinic starts to feel unsafe, Tati must overcome her own insecurities to keep the new girl from quitting before the end of the day. My director and I felt that we see abortion in movies in a very sort of distant way. There is no sort of demystification of the process. And that is what we're trying to do with this movie, by we are going step by step in every procedure room and every recovery room and all of these things. And we look at the equipments, we look at the things, we demystify these spaces for women to make it more accessible. Because like I said in the beginning, that I believe that cinema is a part of our collective memory. And that also means that it normalizes a lot of conversations, a lot of visuals, normalize experiences. And that's what we want to do with Behind the Curtain, our thesis film. The other project that I'm working on is Sokama, which is another short film, which is inspired from my own mother, and not really from her own mother, but these conversations that I've had with my mom over the various years about, as a South Asian woman, about the stigma around desire and how she talks about never really having thought about it or never having experienced it. So Sokama as a short film was inspired from her sort of work. And before I forget, the previous film, our thesis film, just my apologies, my thesis film, Behind the Curtain, won the Sloan Grant. Won the Sloan Grant and for $25K, and we are making the movie with that money, and we are planning to screen it in the festival circuit. Apologies. Moving on to Sokama. So Sokama is somewhat inspired from my personal experiences, and the protagonist is my mother. It's about a middle-aged woman, Rhea Mathur, who must navigate her peaking sexual desire in a world where she feels invisible, but suddenly finds an outlet in the form of her son's soccer coach. I think with this film, I wanted to have conversations about desire, about understanding a woman's body and her needs, and her, celebrating all of those things in their full capacity, and not thinking of women in the roles of mother, daughter, which is almost like desexualized roles. And I'm trying to have these conversations through a comedy. This is a short comedy, so that to make the conversation and the topics more palatable and approachable for everyone else. The other film that I'm working on right now, it's a feature film. It's again inspired from my personal experiences growing up in India, and it's called The Head Girl. It is a coming-of-age comedy about an ambitious nerd who has to win the approval of her peers and fight against her former best friend to win the student body election at her all-girls Catholic boarding school. This is a genre that has not been explored in India, and especially with an all-female-led cast. It's never been done before. So I wanted to explore this and write this film. I think the reason why I want to do this film is also to start conversations about election, which is the subtext in the film, and do it in a comedic setting where people are able to access conversations and larger ethos of elections and political rights and sort of political leanings without putting too much external color in it, lest it gets censored in India. Because for me, it's very important that young people have conversations about political autonomy and political authority. And I feel like by making people laugh and by getting them to your side, I feel like when you make someone laugh, you get them on your side. I feel like it's easier to have a conversation then. And that's my goal with this film, to have conversations about elections, to have conversations about friendships, to have conversations, to have a wholesome experience while watching this film. So that was my goal and intention in Head Girl. The other The other project that I'm working on is called Item Number. It is a legal comedy about a beaten down RBG. Her name is Ruth Bhargava, who wants to work on meaningful cases in an absurdist legal system in India and to probably find a little time for love. Item Number is inspired from my personal experiences as a litigating lawyer in India. So before becoming a screenwriter, I worked as a criminal defense lawyer in India for 4 years. And I felt that there is, while we think of the legal system as this mammoth entity that cannot be, sort of be taken down or fought against, and there is a lot of fear and apprehension that people have while facing the legal system. And I think by my intention of doing a comedy series or a comedy pilot is to tackle this at a thematic level in a way that it makes it more accessible. When you the best way to unearth or sort of demystify a monster is by laughing at it. But if you're laughing at something, or if you're laughing at the structure of the system, you're not necessarily scared of it anymore. And I think that is something that I want to do with my pilot. So I'm setting it as an office comedy, and we look at the absurdist rules and systems and policies that are in place in India and how a woman has to navigate those spaces. And it is solely from the POV of this woman and how she's trying to find a work-life balance in that situation, which is, a Herculean task, considering you have very little time for anything else but work. So that's the pilot that I'm working on. I think to wrap this all up, I wanted to put out my sort of creative philosophy, which is that I look at films as a medium of change, and I want to write films because of its democratic reach. It is a medium that transcends language, literacy, and boundaries, and I want my stories to have that reach. And I think that is the reason why I chose cinema as a medium. I also choose humor as a medium because it acts as a bridge that brings people together in their laughter, something that has been missing from a larger cultural narrative for so long. For me, cinema is my means of activism in the world, of telling deeper human stories that have global resonance, which wouldn't have been possible without AAW's international fellowship, because without your assistance, I wouldn't have been able to complete my second year at the American Film Institute. So thank you so much for your assistance. And I really hope that I'm able to champion more of women-centric stories and make a few people laugh and bring them in conversations. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Shanice Estrada. I am a recipient of the Career Development Grant, which I am blessed and so honored to be chosen for this grant. I'm currently a PA student at Charles Drew University in Los Angeles, California. So I'm getting my master's of health science as a physician assistant. So I'm going to start with a little background information about my medical position as a medical provider. So PAs, I know sometimes PAs get mixed up with nurse practitioners and MDs. So it's kind of all in the same group. PAs are able to be medical providers and diagnose illnesses, develop and manage treatment plans for patients, prescribe medications, and we often serve as a patient's principal healthcare professional provider as well. So the PA profession began in 1967, and there's about 277 PA programs here in the US currently. Some of the programs, they vary as far as the time span of the program. Some are 27 months to 3 years. So my program is 27 months. I just finished my first year, and now I'm on to my second year. So as a PA provider, we are able to work in many different settings as far as urgent care, hospitals, a lot of different medical settings, and we're able to transfer to all the different specialties when we choose to after we receive our license. So as opposed to medical students, we don't have to go through residency to to able to switch our rotation, our specialty that we want to practice in as a PA. If I want to start off in the ER for a couple of years, then I could go on to family medicine or OBGYN whenever I want to. So that's a benefit that drew me into this career as well. So this is a picture of my institution, Charles Drew University. So our program mission at my school is to prepare a diverse group of uniquely qualified physician assistants to provide excellent medical care with compassion while addressing health disparities, seeking social justice, and improving the health of the medically underserved community. So that's one of the main things that drew me to the specific institution, because Charles Drew is very diverse and they encourage us to work in disadvantaged communities once we graduate. And that's what I've always been planning to do. I grew up in Los Angeles in a disadvantaged community, so I always enjoy giving back to my community. So the program goal is to prepare students with the knowledge and skills necessary for entry into the medical practice as a PA. So I just finished my first year, and that was my didactic year, which is basically just all lectures and cadaver labs for anatomy, which was very amazing and interesting. Going through that course as well, and just being able to practice with my classmates for different checklists, procedures as far as eye exams and other things as well. I'll get to that picture right here. So our first year, it was 72 credits for 12 months, which is a lot of compacted units, really rapid, and a lot for just the first year, but definitely doable. So I'm in my second year, which is our clinical rotations year, and I'm starting off in family medicine, which has been amazing. I've really been enjoying it. So what we've been doing, our first year is preparing for our clinical rotations. As you can see, pictures of us giving eye exams, checking ears, the whole HENT clinical skills as far as head, eyes, nose, ears, and then doing pre-op practice for entering surgery, how to put on the proper attachment, and so on. So this is some of my experiences during my year and during practice with my classmates, like I repeated, patient interactions, and also practicing making casts on arms. My classmate did mine and I did his. So that was very fun, and just a lot of interactions to prepare us for when we're with patients, as far as patient interactions, interviews, and drilling into us the proper way to approach situations and talk to patients as a medical provider. So one of the big things that I just love that I'm able to be a part of is providing to our community around us. I'm a part of Social Justice Society committee, and basically we plan things to contribute different resources to our community around us, which is in the heart of LA. And each year we do a toy drive. So we got a lot of resources who donated gifts for us, and me being able to contribute to the gifts as well was definitely awesome, amazing. So we get a lot of gifts, wrap them, and then we go to a church to pass them out in the community in LA. So that was very exciting. And we have a garden club as well, where we plant and we pass out some nice organic vegetables and fruit to our community around us. And we also do service as far as picking up litter and trash around the community, around our campus as well. And we've also made a trip to Venice Beach to pass out some items to the homeless, being that, LA has an increase in the homeless population. So being able to contribute to all of these sources for the community and being able to make a difference within our community has definitely been amazing. And I continue to do that as I continue my next year and a half of PA school. Thank you.
My name is Dr. Brittany Friedman, and I am an assistant professor of sociology at the University of Southern California. I am thrilled that this year I am an American Fellow through the American Association of University Women, and I am currently on postdoctoral research leave working on a book project that is entitled Capitalism, Cover-Ups, and the Dark Side of Saviors. My project explores how those we construe as saviors often use institutions to cover up their harmful behavior. I reveal that saviors do not represent an exception within a capitalist society, but instead they are actually an inevitable and important pattern produced by that very system. My project investigates and unveils who the saviors are, why they exist, and how their cover-ups serve a key social function. I argue that saviors wear a mask to gain people's trust and avoid scrutiny. And so to achieve this, saviors peddle virtue and choose social institutions that do the same. Both would be what I would call virtue peddlers. Saviors and the institutions that harbor them, they market themselves as the chosen ones who can then fix social problems. And so this savior mask is so convincing and so complete for the individual and the institutions that harbor them that their darker selves, as we would call it, remain obscured. And so as people associate the savior with virtue, they begin placing them on a pedestal characterized by less scrutiny and an assumption of pure motives for their altruistic behavior. And in return, saviors give people something to believe in. I describe this as a market exchange, and it is a repeat social pattern that allows saviors to establish authority over what is good versus what is bad. And this enchants us to then further place them on a pedestal so that we too can be saved from the mundane problems of our lives, problems that are created and exacerbated by the exploitation and what I call disenchantment inherent to capitalism. And in a capitalist system, I describe how virtue or perceived virtue becomes a very powerful and valuable commodity. And so virtues that we like to think of ourselves as or project onto others, such as charity, humility, temperance, and enlightenment, they're peddled by saviors in an exchange for power and authority over others. I talk about how capitalism hollows out the societal support systems that traditionally provide communal care, acceptance, and love, core human needs. And it creates voids where saviors then opportunistically market themselves as these virtuous saviors who can fill unmet needs. We are a society that is wrought with disenchantment and a sense of uneasiness and dissatisfaction, and saviors know how to position themselves as, quote, the opiate of the people, end quote, to fill these voids. So how should we contextualize these relationships? Well, I situate these arguments within the context of modernity and industrialization and show how these opportunities for predation arise. And so further, when I'm talking about disenchantment, I am leaning into these high levels of generalized anxiety, loneliness, and depression that are inherent in the current society as it's organized, because we are surviving in a world that has become highly anonymized and impersonal over time, where monetary exchanges are the dominant structure of social relations. And the absence of substantiated connection with others, akin to villages and communalisms of pre-industry, we see this reflection of this impersonal nature of large-scale bureaucracies and isolating consequences of various types of technological innovations. And so this structural gap is what is allowing for the rise of saviors to purportedly save us from society-created problems. But what happens is it places scores of vulnerable populations at risk for the savior's predation. To make these arguments, I draw from a broad range of unique data sources to examine different cases of savior cover-ups, specifically instances of saviors virtue peddling to create what we would consider to be their front stage persona that then allows them to cover up their harmful behavior on the backstage. And these savior cover-ups span across time, place, and institutional niche, and represent a wide range of societal virtues that we hold dear. My study necessitates I approach this research from a comparative historical perspective and mapping patterns across very recent and not so recent cases. And so, for example, I focus on famous saviors such as Bikram Choudhury, Bill Cosby, Jerry Sandusky, to those from everyday walks of life, such as Boy Scout counselors, doctors, local pastors, and priests, all of whom, across many decades and more, have victimized scores and at times thousands of people under the cover of their savior mask. I use this case selection because it underscores the transferability of the savior mask and its resonance within American culture across a variety of industries and organizational niches, and its general use by institutions and individual saviors to victimize vulnerable populations. And so this method allows me to utilize a variety of primary and secondary source materials, and these include legal case files, interview recordings and transcripts, administrative files from institutions, letters, and personal memoirs, in order to craft the evidence for these arguments. And so I'm excited to further get these claims and analyses onto the page this year during my fellowship as I work on and finish this book. And I'm very grateful to AAUW for the support in doing that. Thank you.
Hi all, my name is Sneha George. I'm a PhD candidate in ethnic studies, and my dissertation is called The Absent Presence of Anti-Blackness: Property, Ownership, and the Self-Making of a Scholar. In 2017, the Cite Black Women movement was created to draw attention to the ways Black women are exploited by the university, particularly via citation practices and plagiarism. While Black women contribute greatly to intellectual work throughout academia, Black women are not credited, celebrated, or promoted for their work in the same way non-Black people are. This contributes to tenure promotions, acceptance, hiring, and publication rates remaining low for women of color, and in particular, Black women in comparison to white academics. These studies demonstrate that the university is and has been a particularly violent space for Black women and women of color at large, despite the work that they produce that benefit the university. My project examines this relationship between property, theft, ownership, and anti-Black violence in the university by examining the focus on the cheater and cheating as terrorist practice and figure within the university. and the scholars and the university's investment in surveilling and punishing this figure. This dissertation argues, rather than the cheater, it is a university's requirement to transform knowledge into commodifiable private property that binds the marginalized scholar to the racialized and gendered violences of the neoliberal university. The Cite Black Women statement states, one of the palpable echoes of slavery is the continued and widespread perception that Black women's ideas and creative works should be plagiarized, just like our labor, our bodies, our love. Despite attention to the racism by university, this collective expresses that Black people, particularly Black women, continue to be regarded as laborers who produce scholarship for the university, yet do not have the security of fully owning scholarship they produce. Instead, the scholarship they produce becomes available for others to plagiarize and take as their own. I draw on Stephen M. Best, who teaches us that this relationship with ownership and theft emerged out of slave ontologies. Thus, the university continues to perpetuate, as Smith also states, slave logics where the extension of Black women's personhood, including their scholarship, ideas, and other intellectual properties, are viewed as available for the market and its subjects to use. Kristen Smith states elsewhere that citing Black women is not just a practice of citation, but also a practice of honoring and respecting Black women's work and their legacies in knowledge production. I agree that citation practice is indeed of the highest import in the Here and Now University. In no way am I invalidating the work of the Cite Black Women Collective. This section, however, attempts to demonstrate that these solutions do not abolish property logics that render the theft from Black women illegible in the first place. Rather, identifying an authentic owner and author of certain scholarships doubles down on scholarship as something that can in fact be owned and thus perpetuates ownership as an ideal. This is the bind the university puts scholars in. While university continues to operate through anti-Blackness, the only way to redress that violence is through those very logics. Moreover, this is the bind that whiteness and its institutions like racial capitalism puts people in. While whiteness is violent and genocidal, we're made to believe the only way to redress is through the assimilation into the white world. This is something Sneha Hartman and others have taught us. In the next section, my dissertation examines the cheater in relation to the university as functioning similarly to the terrorist in relation to the state. Here, I evoke Jasbir Puar's analysis of the terrorist, where the terrorist is figured as an exceptional foreign embodiment, one that is the queered antithesis of the heteronormative citizen, and a threat to the state. Feminist surveillance studies teaches us that by positioning the terrorist as the threat to both the citizen and the nation, the state is able to divert attention away from the state's anti-Black structure and double down on its borders and its subjecthood created by sovereignty or citizenship as something to be protected rather than problematized and destroyed. The cheater is the antithesis of a good scholar, just as the terrorist is the antithesis of the citizen. The cheater is a figure and an abstract practice and embodiment constructed by social meaning. Similar to the terrorist, the cheater is racialized as a foreign body and functions to obfuscate university violence. For example, in a case at the University of Maryland, a Chinese student filed a complaint with the Civil Rights and Sexual Misconduct Office, stating that her professor targeted her as a cheater based on her being Chinese. This student's professor stated that she, quote, cheated her way into the university, and that all Chinese students cheat their way into the university. This rhetoric is not new. In my data collection interviews with scholars and students across the nation at various institutions, the association between Asian students and foreign students at large, especially the Chinese national student, and cheating was prolific. Despite the news of wealthy white families buying their children's place into the university, this foreign Asian threat overrepresents the cheater in the university. Like the terrorist, this figure of the cheater is necessarily foreign because if the threat is foreign, the domestic must be secured. Cheating resists individual ownership vis-a-vis theft. In this way, cheating itself is an attempt at liberating the self from both the university and its demands by forcing one's place and upward mobility in the university. Cheating demands and forces communal ownership by perverting the legality and order of the university. However, the cheater, as a practice of liberation, falls short in that it does not cohere without the structures of the university in the here and now. Thus, property and ownership and of knowledge makes the figure of the cheater, and simultaneously, the cheater facilitates the doubling down of property through their very resistance. Like the terrorist, the cheater is both othered and desired as a figure that maintains order through its resistance of order. By positioning ownership of knowledge as an ideal, whiteness, and in this case, the neoliberal university, uses the theft of the cheater to solidify its position and thereby further reinforce the racial antagonisms that keep Black women marginalized in the university. This further underscores the fact that the university functions, as Paperson states, as state machinery. That is, a machinery that functions to keep racial order. In order to imagine a new university, a new relationship to knowledge, one that is equitable and just, we must reject turning knowledge into property. We must resist the securing and policing of property, and we must disavow the ideal of ownership. Thank you.
Greetings, my name is Dana Harmon, and I am currently a second-year tenure-track faculty member in the biology department at California Lutheran University in Thousand Oaks, California. I am honored to tell you all about my research project funded by the AAUW Research Publication Grants in Engineering, Medicine, and Science to understand the role of efflux pumps in physiological responses in the model bacterium E. coli. Efflux pumps are large protein structures found in the envelopes of bacteria that function in the removal of toxic compounds and metabolites to promote survival. These pumps, also called multi-drug efflux pumps, are also able to remove several classes of antibiotics and in so doing confer antibiotic resistance. In E. coli, there are several efflux pumps, 9 of which are dependent on the outer membrane channel Tolsi, shown here in blue. The main multi-drug efflux pump found in E. coli is the ACR-AB Tolsi efflux pump. It is responsible for decreased susceptibility to nearly all classes of antibiotics, as well as bile salts, detergents, solvents, dyes, and various other toxic molecules. Additionally, studies have suggested that the ACR-AB Tolsi efflux pump is involved in regulating metabolism in E. coli. The EMR-AB Tolsi pump, another of the 9 Tolsi-dependent efflux pumps, decreases susceptibility to fluoroquinolones, novobiosin, and triclosan antibiotics. Furthermore, we hypothesize that this pump also plays a role in metabolism. The basis for linking the ACR-AB Tolsi pump to metabolism comes from 2 published studies. In 2014, Ruiz and Levy found that deletion of ACRB, the substrate binding component of the ACR-AB Tolsi pump, modulated metabolism and motility, or swimming, gene expression, as well as causing an overall increase in motility versus the parental strain, as illustrated here. In a 2019 study in which I was involved, we determined that deletion of ACRB also altered the amount and distribution of metabolic intermediates both intracellularly and extracellularly. In our preliminary studies to determine if other efflux pumps would also contribute to metabolism, we used the established link between efflux pumps and motility to determine that the EMR-AB Tolsi efflux pump also seemed to impact global responses in E. coli, based on the fact that the EMRB deleted mutant exhibited increased motility over the parental. This preliminary finding led me to my central question: What is the contribution of the EMR-AB Tulsi efflux pump on metabolism in E. coli? To that end, this research project has two goals. One is to identify those cellular metabolites effluxed by the EMR-AB Tulsi efflux pump, and two, to identify genes involved in metabolism that are controlled by EMR-AB Tulsi. To answer the first question, what are the cellular metabolites effluxed by EMR-AB Tulsi? We are going to use a technique called untargeted metabolomics to compare the total intracellular and extracellular metabolite profiles of both the wild-type parental cells and the efflux pump mutants. We will evaluate the metabolic profiles of these strains in various growth conditions, including nutrient-rich and nutrient-poor media, at normal and cool temperatures to determine the contribution of this pump in multiple metabolic states. Metabolites present in our strains will be identified at the UC Davis Metabolomics Core Facility using special gas and liquid chromatography mass spectrometry. From UC Davis, we will receive a data set with the relative abundances of all metabolites present in our samples. We will analyze this data for changes in total metabolite pools between the EMRB efflux mutant and the parental strain. Any hits from our screen will be further evaluated in the lab to determine if the identified metabolites are direct substrates of the EMR-AB Tulsi efflux pump. To determine which genes are controlled by EMR-AB Tulsi, we will use transcriptomics to measure the relative level of gene expression in our parental cells versus the efflux pump mutants. Like in the metabolomics study, we will grow cells in nutrient-rich and nutrient-poor media at normal and cool temperatures before extracting the total RNA. This RNA will be sent to an RNA sequencing core facility that can sequence all of the RNA transcripts produced in our strains, and we can use this information to identify those genes whose expression is altered in the efflux pump mutant. Our model for how efflux pumps regulate metabolism says that Tulsi-dependent pumps efflux metabolites produced intracellularly during growth. Insufficient efflux of certain metabolites leads to their intracellular accumulation. The accumulation of metabolites leads to global changes in metabolic flux, as well as increased motility. Our hypothesis is that efflux insufficiency leads to an accumulation of metabolites that initiate responses that promote survival. How does this model change the big picture? In addition to their well-characterized role in protecting cells against outside stress, efflux pumps may play an even more important role in regulating metabolism. This is a new paradigm of understanding for what these efflux pumps do in bacteria. The goal of this work and future work is to elucidate the role of these pumps in metabolism, homeostasis, and stress responses, and to define the role that these pumps play in E. coli and other related bacteria. First and foremost, I want to thank the AAUW for choosing my project for funding. With these funds, we will be able to pay core facility fees for metabolomics and transcriptomics, and to purchase necessary lab equipment, supplies, and reagents for data analysis and validation of hits from metabolomics and the transcriptomics screens. Also, I want you to know that this funding is going to be used to support the experiential learning of 5 excellent undergraduate students who are all involved in every aspect of this research project. Thank you again for this prestigious honor.
On September 5th, 2013, I stepped into a world vastly different from my own, a school where chaos ruled and where zip codes determined a student's fate. That day, I felt the weight of educational inequity, and it lit a fire in me for the rest of my life. My name is Katelyn Harris, and I'm an MBA candidate at Stanford's Graduate School of Business. From that pivotal day back in 2013, I discovered my ikigai, and my dream for a better world crystallized. My dream is a world where every young woman, in particular those from marginalized communities, has equitable access to education, clarity on her career options, and a clear path to achieve them. To bring this dream to life, I co-founded Building Opportunities in Support of Sisters, BOSS, a professional development and mentorship program for low-income, first-generation, and minority high school students, just like me. We've already changed the trajectory for nearly 200 young women, teaching them valuable life skills and broadening their horizons as it relates to career possibilities. With nearly $70,000 raised in funding, a team of 7 dedicated souls, and a vision that keeps expanding, we're not stopping here. I'm doing an MBA at Stanford GSB, specializing in public management and social innovation, where my passion meets my purpose. I'm really interested in exploring education and tech, and so courses like Business and Public Policy Perspectives on U.S. Inequality and Disruptions in Education really empower me to merge my business acumen with tech knowledge and educational insight. Exploring global education inequity is really what energizes me here. I'm passionate about understanding its root causes, learning more about its depth, and crafting informed solutions using the information that I learn. As a Black woman and first-generation college student, my journey has been shaped by my unique blend of passion, experiences, and my lived realities at the intersections of marginalized identities. Founding my nonprofit provided a grassroots insight, changing trajectories for numerous students, and highlighting the systemic issues facing low-income and minority women. My tenure at Google was more than just a job. It was a mission to uplift and ensure equitable growth opportunities, especially for Black and Latinx women. Working at BCG's education practice and Bright Eye Ventures exposed me to the expansive landscape of educational change, from corporate strategies to edtech startups. Over the past decade, I have lived education's intersections with technology, policy, and innovation, always committed to the underserved. What makes me good at this work is not only my degree in educational policy from Vanderbilt University, but my deep knowledge that has accumulated over time, intimate understanding of the intricacies of education from various sectors' point of views, and most importantly, my core belief that experience begets advocacy. Having navigated these challenges myself, I'm resolute in my mission to advocate, enhance systems, and promote inclusion, inspiring our community to do the same. After Stanford, I've charted a clear course on how I'll apply everything that I've learned. First, I'm exploring multiple sectors. Right after graduation, I'm diving headfirst into several industries: nonprofits, social impact within big tech, and educational consulting. I see a future where I'm leveraging the media's great reach and scale as a chief impact officer, influencing the content and products of the primary teacher of our youth, the media. Second, I'm taking BOSS to new heights. Business school has taught me a lot about scaling organizations, and so I've developed some really concrete and actionable goals that'll help me know that I've been successful. In the next year, we're bringing our career awareness platform to over 50 schools, coupled with a robust online platform. In 3 years, I see us in 500 schools, collaborating with corporations and awarding scholarships. And in 7 years, I want us to be the go-to platform for career guidance nationwide.
Hello, my name is Hope Hauptman, and I'm going to tell you a bit about my research on groundwater contamination. It's called Slipping Through the Cracks, a geospatial and treatment analysis of 1,2,3-trichloropropane, or TCP, in drinking water supplies. I'm a PhD candidate in environmental systems at the University of California, Merced. Work with the Fuse Us Lab, where we co-design sustainable and culturally sensitive food, energy, water systems with communities. My research takes multiple lenses in looking at the issue of safe drinking water or drinking water quality in the Central California region of the United States. And I'm particularly looking at a man-made contaminant called TCP found in groundwater. So big picture, the world is not doing well with the number and quantity of chemicals that are released to the environment. In 2009, the Stockholm Resilience Center outlined 9 processes that regulate the stability and resilience of the Earth's system. Things like carbon dioxide concentration and nitrogen flows, and one category called novel entities. Novel entities are new and different combinations of chemicals that are not found naturally. And in 2023, the Earth passed the boundary for novel entities because the production outpaced the available monitoring and treatment for chemicals released to the air, water, and land. So the chemical I study, TCP, falls under this category. And I took, again, a look at it from a few different points of view. So legacy TCP contamination is relatively common in California Central Valley region. You can see on this distribution map. TCP was a trace impurity in fumigants that were used to prepare the soil for agricultural planting. It is tasteless, odorless, and persistent, and it is found in North America, Europe, Asia, 13 states in the US, and Puerto Rico. TCP is found to be carcinogenic, and it reduces fertility in mice. So in California, TCP is part of a larger problem when it comes to access to safe drinking water. In 2012, California passed Assembly Bill 685, which recognizes that water is a human right and guarantees water, safe water, and affordable water without discrimination. However, it's estimated that 1 million or more people could face long-term health issues from unsafe drinking water. And there are more than 370 water systems that exceed maximum contaminant levels. That's the highest amount of a contaminant in drinking water for substances harmful to health. We also know that water disproportionately affects communities of color, particularly Latino communities. So in terms of TCP, communities have been dealing with this conflict of removal and treatment costs by suing chemical companies that produce the substance in the first place. However, the people that have domestic or private wells are on their own in terms of the cost of monitoring and treatment. And part of the reason why treatment costs are so high is that the maximum amount allowed for TCP is set so low. In 2017, California set the MCL at 5 parts per trillion, which is equivalent to 5 drops of TCP in 20 Olympic-sized swimming pools. So this map on the right shows areas that are above the maximum contaminant level for TCP. So you can see concentrated in the middle of the state, where the agricultural region is, we have a higher number of incidents of wells that are above the MCL for TCP. And of course, these areas also face other negative environmental pressures, like some of the highest PM 2.5 pollution in the air and high nitrates, drought, and extreme heat. So I published a policy memo arguing to extend that 5-point maximum contaminant level on the federal level so that everyone has the same access to low or non-existent TCP levels in their water, regardless of their zip code. My research really is divided into 3 different parts that all work together as a whole. One, I conducted a systematic review of treatment technologies to understand more about available treatments, gaps in the research, and what might be needed in terms of more sustainable treatments. Second, I constructed a predictive machine learning model based on explanatory variables that may predict where TCP is more likely to be concentrated in groundwater. And finally, I looked at alternative carbon sources to extract TCP from contaminated water. One based on almond biochar, so shells from almonds that are made into sort of a coal-like or chard-like substance, and they're used for extraction. And I also looked at gravity point of view treatments to see how successful they were, which is especially important as a stopgap measure for people that have unsafe water now, but they don't have a treatment system in place. So in terms of removal methods, we found that this chart shows you some of the available methods that we found with our analysis. And the darker the color, the more advanced that treatment is. And granular activated carbon is applied at the public well level, but the carbons that are used to extract CCP are based on coconut and coal. And our predictive model was able to show which model, if we compared a random forest model to a boosted regression model to a more simple CART or classification and regressive tree model, which model provided the best, most accurate prediction of TCP in groundwater, and that was a random forest model. We used different explanatory variables shown here on the right. So we looked at land use, we looked at hydrologic soil class, drainage class, age, dissolved oxygen levels, and nitrate levels to create this explanatory map. We also found that vineyards have the highest level of TCP regardless of the year of land use as a vineyard. So we looked from 1945 to 1990, and for all of those, vineyards had the highest level. And in terms of predictive model outcomes then, besides the map itself that shows the surface of prediction, we also found that predominantly the highest levels of TCP are occurring in disadvantaged communities or DACs, and that the most important predictors are precipitation levels, redox state, and nitrate levels. We also then, as a third part of our study, we looked at biochar characterizations. We looked at that almond biochar, it's here. We divided it into equal parts. We looked at the elements present in the biochar. We wanted to characterize what that biochar was like. And then we used it. So we used it to basically combine with TCP in a flask to see if these almond shells, once were almond shells, now almond biochar, could extract TCP from drinking water. And we also looked at home filter removal methods. So we found that many people, based on interviews, are very worried about the quality of their tap water in our region. And we know that pitcher filters can reduce some organic compounds, but they haven't been tested for TCP. So we looked at a filter's lifetime ability to reduce TCP levels. And we found that they did perform throughout the lifetime at about a 95 to 98% removal rate for TCP. So to summarize, TCP monitoring treatments are costly and the efficiency of home treatments are unknown. So we use GIS and predictive modeling to test affordable and sustainable treatments. Thank you so much. I appreciate your attention.